Hello, my name is Samuel Kim. I'm a PhD candidate at Queen's University under the supervision of Dr. Wendy Craig. I'm here to talk about how we can promote healthy relationships and prevent racial bullying in the broader context of the COVID-19 pandemic. We think that these key points will help you identify bullying and differentiate it from more common aggressive behaviors. So bullying behavior is a behavior that is intended to harm the other person in the context of a relationship where there is a power imbalance. Aggression and power imbalance are the core attributes that are always present in bullying. Bullying also is likely to repeat. Bullying often is an issue that is not just a one-time experience, but is likely to happen over time and is likely to be repeated. Bullying also causes harm to those who experience the bullying victimization. And harm can take many forms, including physical, psychological, social, academic, or even property harm. A power imbalance within a peer relationship can occur as a result of several factors. Now, if power is used to perpetuate harm, it is an abuse of power. When it comes to peer relationships, power can be held because of numerous characteristics. For example, socioeconomic status, number of friends, gender, age, ability, appearance, popularity. Race and ethnicity is just one of those many factors in which a power imbalance can form. Power imbalances can be perpetuated just by group membership. And in the context of the coronavirus pandemic, there has been an imbalance of power that has placed Chinese children and East Asian children in general in positions of lower power, just because of their perceived association with the coronavirus or China. Now, bullying is different than teasing. It is important for parents and educators to be aware of what the differences are between teasing, which can be positive, versus bullying, which is always a negative experience that is harmful. When trying to distinguish between teasing and bullying, it is important to ask these 5 questions. Number 1, is the behavior reciprocated? Bullying is not usually reciprocated. There is clearly someone who is engaging in the bullying behavior and someone who is being victimized. Teasing involves a back and forth between individuals and is shared equally. The second question is, do both people look like they are having a good time? Usually, teasing happens within an already existing positive relationship where both people are sharing in the teasing experience. On the other hand, bullying is one-sided. The child who is being targeted is in distress and experiencing harm from someone else who is using their power in an abusive way. Third question, is the behavior fun? Teasing can be fun and enjoyable for both people who are engaged in it. It should be playful and positive. On the other hand, bullying is a negative experience where someone intentionally causes others to be afraid and hurt. It is not a positive experience. The fourth question is, has this happened before with these individuals? Teasing tends to happen within relationships that are already strong and where people are familiar with each other. Bullying also tends to happen repeatedly within relationships. So yes, both teasing and bullying can happen over time repeatedly. The fifth and most important question is there a power differential? A key difference between bullying and teasing is that when people are engaging in teasing, there is no power differential. Teasing is used to demonstrate closeness and affection between two equally powerful individuals. Teasing is a way to increase our bond with others and positively interact in a playful way. On the other hand, in bullying, there's always a power imbalance. This power is abused in order to harm others. So parents and teachers can ask these 5 questions to check whether or not we should be concerned about a child being bullied or engaging in bullying behaviors. To recap, racial bullying is never fun, it can be repeated, and it always causes harm to the child being targeted. It always involves a power imbalance between children. When we review different ways that bullying can occur, we see that bullying can happen in a physical manner, involving kicking, hitting, shoving, damaging property. It can be verbal, such as name calling, mocking, making hurtful comments. It can be nonverbal, either humiliating someone, making gestures. It can be social, by excluding others, damaging friendships on purpose, spreading false lies or rumors or secrets. It could also be bias-based. So bullying can happen because people are treating others with disrespect based on some sort of identity. So whether that is because of gender identity, sexual identity, appearance, disability, ethnicity, or cultural identity, bias-based bullying is about treating others differently or with disrespect because of these core features about them. Bullying can also happen electronically, using email, social media, text messages to cyberbully others. So when we talk about racial bullying, we think about racial bullying as one form of bias-based bullying, targeting someone for who they are or their identity. It is about targeting someone because of their core cultural and racial identity. And racial bullying can take on these different forms. It can happen physically, it can happen verbally, it can happen socially, and it can also be perpetuated electronically. So it's important to keep an eye out for how racial bullying can be engaged or how it can be perpetuated through all these different sorts of means. When we want to define racial bullying, we can define it as a set of aggressive behaviors that harm others based on racial and cultural differences. And racial bullying happens in a context where there is a power imbalance. And this power is used to harm others' sense of cultural or racial identity. Some examples of how power can be used to cause others' sense of cultural and racial identity to experience harm is by saying bad, negative, hurtful things about a cultural group, calling someone racist names, telling racist jokes, or perpetuating negative stereotypes. The COVID-19 situation has created an environment where Chinese or other East Asian appearing youth can be more easily targeted by racial bullying. The pandemic has clearly associated Chinese youth with the COVID-19 virus and identified them as being the outsider group, as being responsible for what is happening in the world. This has set the stage for racial bullying and discrimination and negative stereotypes to happen. So in the context of COVID-19, racial bullying may involve saying negative and hurtful things about China, Chinese culture, Chinese individuals, negatively associating East Asian youth to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, or perpetuating negative stereotypes about China, Chinese culture, or other East Asian nations or their cultures. So racial bullying is a problem in Canada. When we look at the 2010 Health Behaviors Among School-Aged Children survey in Canada, about 1 in 5 boys reported experiencing racial bullying at least once or twice in the past 2 months. Girls are less likely to experience racial bullying than boys, but nonetheless do. For girls, racial bullying decreases as they get older, whereas for boys, we see that racial bullying tends to increase in higher grades. Some other things that we know about racial bullying about Canadian youth from previous research is that in Canada, ethnic minority youth in general are more likely to be racially bullied compared to ethnically majority youth. This tends to be especially true for elementary school children. And ethnic minority youth are more likely to experience bullying in school and community contexts that are less ethnically diverse, speaking to the protective nature of ethnic diversity within our social contexts. So one theory that helps us understand how racial bullying might happen is intergroup conflict theory. This theory tells us how humans tend to behave whenever we are in groups. So from a very young age, children tend to form groups and differentiate themselves from others based on various individual characteristics, such as gender, grade, interests, values, physical appearance, spoken language, and cultural practices. So cultural and ethnic background, or other factors that are kind of derived from cultural and ethnic background, such as practices and spoken language, is just one of many characteristics that influence how children form groups and identify themselves as being different than others. And once we are in groups, we begin to behave in ways that favor our own group against other groups. We start to make comparisons between ourselves and others who are different than us to support our own sense of self, to boost our own group's sense of self. We feel better about ourselves and our group that we belong in when we believe that we belong to the better group and that there is a worse group. So research shows that if people are randomly divided into groups, over time, we respond with this in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination. We naturally begin to take a us versus them mentality. We start to act in ways that discriminate against those members who are not within our group, and in ways that favor those who are more similar to us. So these sort of naturally occurring group processes set the stage or create the context for racial bullying to occur, as people tend to bully those who are outside of their group. So over time, some groups tend to gain status and power, and others become more vulnerable to being victimized. And racial bullying and discrimination happen because of these in-group and out-group processes that occur based on racial and ethnic identity. So members of minority groups may be more likely to be targets of bullying and discrimination because of the power imbalances that occur between ethnic minority and ethnic majority groups. So in the context of the coronavirus, out-group discrimination is happening right now. Attributions that are being made about coronavirus are placing East Asian youth as the outgroup. It clearly identifies them as others who are not like us, who are supposedly responsible for what is going on in the world. And it falsely attributes the coronavirus pandemic to this outgroup. And this creates this in-group favoritism and identifies this other group that is easy to discriminate against and perpetuate bullying and negative stereotypes. So the COVID-19 situation has created this larger context in which racial discrimination and bullying is tolerated and promoted. So during the situation, East Asian minority youth are now associated with coronavirus and identified as the outgroup. And the outgroup is stereotyped and discriminated against. What this does is it increases stigmatization of Chinese and East Asian youth. And it also increases isolation and decreases the ability of Chinese and East Asian youth to participate in the in-group because of the stereotyping and the discrimination that comes with these false attributions about the coronavirus pandemic. So we talked briefly about how racial bullying happens as a group phenomenon. It's a group process where the children in the in-group are more likely to target and discriminate against the children of the out-group based on false biases about others who are not similar to them. So what we know from research is that bullying often does happen in groups. peers are often involved in bullying as bystanders. Both members of the in-group and the out-group can witness the bullying occur. In fact, bystanders are present in about 85% of bullying situations. Bystanders can be part of the problem, or they can be part of the solution. Some bystanders can make the racial bullying worse by supporting the child who is engaging in the bullying. They can do that by laughing, cheering, clapping at the negative jokes, stereotypes, or comments that reinforce the bullying perpetrator and the negative stereotypes that are being made about the outgroup. Others can improve the bullying situation by defending the person who is being victimized. Sadly, bystanders only intervene to help victimized peers about 11% of the time. So bullying harms everyone in the bullying situation, both the children who are bullied, the children who bully others, and those who witness it are all negatively affected in various ways. So for victimized youth, the long-term effects associated with bullying are similar to other kinds of abuse. They include lower academic achievement, impaired stress regulation, and increased mental health problems. And racial bullying in particular harms victimized youth's ethnic sense of self, so ethnic self-esteem and self-worth. Being racially victimized or discriminated against during adolescence negatively impacts stress, anxiety, and motivation later in life. For bullying perpetrators, engaging in the behaviors, including racial bullying, teaches children about abusing power in relationships. This puts them at risk for continued interpersonal violence in their workplaces and in their relationships as adults. For bystander youth who witness the bullying, witnessing the bullying happen at school might influence them to perceive their school environment as an unsafe place, and their student well-being is compromised. Furthermore, witnessing racial bullying or racial discrimination could negatively affect witnesses' own sense of cultural and ethnic identity. So overall, racial bullying contributes to a negative school climate where students feel less safe, less connected, and less included. So given that peers are part or present in most bullying situations, it is important to recognize their power in being part of the solution. Victimized youth are more likely to tell a friend about bullying than a teacher or even their own parents. And observational research indicates that peers can be effective at stopping bullying when it happens. But some children might lack strategies to intervene effectively when they witness racial bullying happen. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to give children evidence-based strategies that they can use to support their friends and effectively respond to racial bullying when it does happen. So I want to review some effective strategies. One can be to report the bullying to an adult on their own or with friends. Adults can be very effective in intervening and stopping and preventing bullying. Next, bystanders can support or comfort their friend who is being victimized. We can do that by inviting the person who is being victimized to play a game, using comforting words to demonstrate care and empathy. And so by supporting and comforting the victimized individuals, bystanders can help reduce the negative stereotypes and the in-group favoritism that is related to racial bullying. It includes those who are perceived outsiders into the in-group. Bystanders can also assertively label the racial bullying behavior and tell the person who is engaging in it to stop in the moment. Now, this could be an effective strategy, but children shouldn't be asked to risk their own safety in the moment. This assertive communication by peers can put an end to the racial discrimination and bullying that is happening, which signals to everyone in the peer context that discrimination and negative stereotypes and biases are not okay and not acceptable. Parents can make a difference by helping our children understand their roles when they witness bullying happen. So parents can teach children how they can respond when they see bullying. All children can make a difference in the moment. We need to help our children safely use these different strategies that are effective in standing up for friends who are being targeted because of their cultural background. Parents can start by having open discussions about whether or not their children has ever witnessed bullying at school and reviewing what happened. Then parents can provide information about how they can respond next time if the bullying happens again. It's important that adults are able to identify bullying when it does happen. Bullying is always negative, and it's always a red flag. Children who are bullied, those who bully others, and those who witness it are all negatively affected. And bullying has both short-term and long-term negative consequences. It can be hard for parents to identify that bullying is occurring or it has happened because it is often kept hidden from parents. And research shows us that children are quite good at keeping bullying hidden. Furthermore, shame is a huge factor that influences youth who experience bullying to not talk about their experiences to adults. And I think racial bullying can be even more particularly shameful because it is something that we cannot change. We cannot change our cultural identity. And it is at the core of who we are as a person. So it can feel a lot more shameful to be targeted because of something that defines us. So as adults, reducing shame about talking about difficult and vulnerable topics like bullying and our cultural identity and being targeted because of that is an important step that parents can take. Identifying bullying at an early stage is important because it enables adults, like parents or teachers, to address it so that it does not get worse and to prevent future bullying. Ultimately, it is really important for parents to identify it early because it is not a normal part of growing up. So when we talk to our youth and help them identify racial bullying or help our children respond to racial bullying, we need to take the first step about talking to them about how to define and identify what's happening. So it's important to talk about the power imbalance that exists when bullying happens. And it's important to review that bullying is something that can be repeated and that happens over time. It's not a one-off experience. And it causes harm to those who experience it. It could be important to review how racial bullying can happen. Racial bullying doesn't just happen on the playground. It can happen physically, socially, verbally, or even electronically when kids aren't at school. Next, adults can help children identify strategies that they would feel comfortable to use when experiencing or witnessing racial bullying. So it could be important to review who to seek help from. Who are the trusted adults at school? What if this happens outside of school? Where are the trusted adults in the child's life, including coaches, religious leaders, counselors, etc.? And how do we respond when we witness racial bullying? Can we report it to an adult that can be trusted and that can effectively intervene? Can we comfort those who experience the racial bullying? And can we possibly assertively communicate to the person who is engaging in the bullying to stop and that behavior is no longer going to be tolerated and not okay? Then we need to provide our kids with skills and support to evaluate whether or not the particular strategy that they used in bullying situations was effective. So adults can help by following up to see whether or not the bullying situation stopped or is continuing to happen. And following up with how children feel about themselves, their classrooms, their schools, their friends, and their own cultural identity. So it's important that parents and teachers also consider, how children might feel embarrassed or ashamed to talk about these negative experiences and throughout this whole process of defining, reviewing the strategies, and evaluating what happened. East Asian children, especially, might find it hard to let parents know about bullying situations that happen at school because they think that it might be a burden to our parents. And I think it's important that parents initiate these open discussions to make it easier for our youth to share what they witness and experience at school. So some tips for parents. One is you start the conversation. So children and youth, like I said before, might feel too embarrassed or ashamed to confide in their parents about something as hurtful as racial bullying. So it's important to talk to our kids and let them know that they will have a receptive audience who will listen to their concerns. Talk openly and often about peer relationships and bullying with your kids. Share any bullying experiences that you might have had when growing up. And use resources like shows and books as a way to have some conversations with your kids about culture, race, stereotypes, and what a healthy relationship looks like. And respond sensitively and with empathy. Children and youth sometimes have a difficulty reporting bullying because they don't know how adults will respond. When your child talks about bullying experiences, use statements that demonstrate empathy and care. Thanking them for taking the courage to speak out about something like bullying is a really good step to take. It is important that our kids feel that they have autonomy. So respond in ways that show that you want to keep them safe and that you care, and in a way that is not over-controlling or overreactive. If you, as an adult, become very angry or upset in the moment, children can feel less safe talking about bullying with you in the future. As parents, we can also praise and practice inclusive and respectful behavior. Parents set the tone for family relationships, and children learn relationship skills by watching their parents' behavior. So practice tolerance and model the use of positive power by respecting and supporting others. Encourage positive relationships among children by praising respectful and inclusive behavior whenever you do see it. Try and focus on the positives of your child, even when they need correcting. And I think it's important as adults to role model cultural sensitivity. Children learn about their own culture and how to interact with people of different cultural backgrounds from observing how their parents do it. It's important that parents role model inclusivity and respect for diverse culture. We can role model how to talk about people from different cultures using culturally sensitive language and by not using any negative stereotypes when we speak about different cultures. Practicing how to treat others' cultures with respect is the best way to help our children learn what is okay and not okay when others talk about our own culture and ethnicity. And one important, I think, tip for parents is to take some time to celebrate your own culture with your kids. Having conversations about positive aspects of our culture and why we should be proud of our culture identity is an important part for kids to understand what is okay and not okay when others talk about our cultural identity. And so modeling the positive aspects of our culture and celebrating that is an important way to build up children's pride and sense of their cultural identity. And parents can partner with schools in order to prevent bullying and racial bullying in particular. So parents can learn about the Caring and Safe School policy. Every school, by law, has a Caring and Safe School policy that highlights how schools plan to prevent and respond to bullying situations. This policy also talks about what are the roles of parents, teachers, and administrators in creating a safe school for all students. So the policy focuses on using a whole school approach to prevent bullying and effectively intervene. And it highlights that parents and guardians of students who engage in the bullying and those who have been harmed by the bullying should be notified by law by the principals. So this policy notes what information the school has to share with you when bullying happens. Also, the schools are mandated to provide parents a way to report instances of bullying. So this policy can be a really good way for parents to understand what are the schools doing when bullying does happen, and what is our role as parents to support the schools in responding to the bullying effectively. And I think parents should contact teachers when you feel worried. Teachers are caring, trusted adults at school who are effective in intervening when bullying happens. Teachers are knowledgeable about policies and how to address problems like bullying that happens in the classroom. So it's important that parents contact teachers when they're concerned about bullying that might be occurring at school. So you can communicate with teachers about a safety plan to keep a child safe from bullying in the future. You can follow up with them about whether the safety plan was effective in reducing the bullying. And you can also learn from the teacher what the classroom expectations are about what children should do when they see and experience bullying. And encourage children to report. So make sure that students and your children know that it's a teacher's job to deal with bullying, and all incidents, such as racial bullying, should be reported. Children often mistake telling teachers as tattling on their friends. So remind them that tattling is what you do on purpose to get others in trouble, and that telling is something that you do in order to get someone out of trouble, in order to support a friend who is in need. So provide them with specific ways that they can report bullying, and review who is a good person to go to when they're in different places at school. It takes courage for children to report bullying, and sometimes for children it can be hard to know who to go to. So I want to review some key messages of this webinar. One, we reviewed that racial bullying, just like any other form of bullying, is an abuse of power. Racial bullying occurs due to biases and discrimination that stem from the in-group directed towards the out-group. The COVID-19 situation has increased the likelihood that Chinese or East Asian youth are harmed by racial bullying and targeted by discrimination and negative stereotypes, because the COVID-19 situation has identified these youth as the out group who is associated with a negative event that is affecting the whole world. And we reviewed that peers have the power to help the racially victimized youth. Peers can be powerful in standing up for their friends, and parents and teachers have an important role to play in helping and supporting our kids to respond effectively when they witness bullying. So partnering between parents and teachers can be very, very effective in supporting our youth when it comes to preventing and intervening when racial bullying happens. So thank you very much for listening to this webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email prevnet@queensu.ca. Thank you.